on hand to go over those changes and updates with you. And then we've got members of the game team, Chris Kokinas and Jonathan Sam, you know them as Greek Salad and Code Monkey, will be here to talk to you. Questions in, and you'll have anonymity and be anonymous. Make sure to write in complete sentences, and remember that we do the question and answer session at the end, so most time I don't have the context clues of exactly what Chris or Mark Chaburka is saying. I'm reading them all after the fact, so make sure they're as complete and coherent as possible. That helps a lot. Also, make sure last request, please just keep the questions on topic. We have a lot to cover today, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions about Playhaven and Writeable tables, so make sure everything is on topic. The webinars aren't the best time for a lot of feature request questions, and the questions that we don't get to, of course, we'll keep this conversation going on the forums later today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Mark Chaburka, and we're going to dive into discussing the changes to Playhaven.
All right. Well, I want to start off with some good news about Playhaven. We've been running it now for just over 2 months, and it's going very well. We've got some data back from Playhaven that shows that the eCPMs are quite effective. The people who are using it are showing good turnover. We're seeing eCPMs anywhere from the high $8 to the high $10 ranges, so close to $11, and some games have gone much higher than that. That's across the board. We've had individuals who have made over $1,000 in a month on a game that they put out for free, and we're continuing to see it trending upward, which is even better. So all things are going really well there. What we really want to talk about, though, is how we're trying to make it a little bit better and more useful for you guys. I know we launched Playhaven with a very slim offering where you can just kind of turn it on and off. And we wanted to give you the capability now of really customizing the experience a bit more, kind of tuning it to your game and putting where you want it to go. And doing so, we added a few features. We took the interstitials and allowed you to place it on transitions between scenes. And we took another feature that Playhaven had to offer, and we incorporated that called their More Games button, which can be used either as their button or as a behavior that you can incorporate and tie to another actor. That pretty much does it. It allows you to kind of put it where you want it. I've seen, if you want to see other examples of games they've been using Playhaven to a great deal of success. Basic users aren't on this, but will be listening in after we post it. We've basically gone and addressed some of the concerns they had with the initial incorporation, which was a mandatory full-screen ad before their game launched. We heard a lot of complaints that was distracting from the launch, that was distracting from the gameplay, that people were going to be pulled out of the experience before they started. So what we did now is we've created a more button that will appear subtly, and we've created the interstitials to happen more infrequently. And what occurs now is during a transition, there is a 25% chance that an ad will spawn on one of those transitions and not 100% at the beginning as it was. So address those concerns. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening currently on the release, I know as we go along, with regards to how it's appearing on the viewer, but understand that's been addressed a bit in the forums and will be talked about as we progress through the rest of the webinar.
Yeah, I can go ahead and address that now. Great. A little bit. Obviously, performing as we intended, and we are investigating the issue. So by that we mean when you're using the viewer, it's showing all the time, whether you're pro or a basic free user. So this is obviously, like I said, not performing as we intended. And we understand that right now the ads can seem really overwhelming when you're testing in the viewer because what's happening is in every possible ad position, it's triggering an interstitial stub. Now this is only meant to show you the various positions where ads could pop up and should not be in any way indicative of the amount of ads that your actual game players and users will experience. So right now it's showing 100% fill at every opportunity where an ad could be, and that's simply just not how it's going to work when the game is actually published and being played. Also, of course, like I already said, these steps should not be showing up for pro users. That's not our intended experience for you guys as pro users, especially because you're not, at this point, you guys are reporting to us that you're not opting into the show advertisement option, and you're still seeing them in the viewer. So that's not acceptable for us, and we understand that you guys are experiencing that regardless of opting in or opting out, and we're working to resolve that as quickly as possible. It's something that is being resolved, being tested, and hopefully we'll have a hot fix for you guys on this issue in the very near future. So that's just a little bit on that. Chris, you want to go over some of the kind of inner workings of how Playhaven should look and operate within the creator?
Absolutely. Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Chris Kokinos. I'm one of the game designers for Game Team 1, GameSalad's internal game development team. I'm going to kind of just guide you through some of these here new features. And we will start it off with Playhaven, just kind of segue from the numbers part into the features part. So as you may have seen in the 0.9.3 release, we have a couple of new features. We have the Playhaven Show More Games, and then within the change scene, paused game, and reset scene behaviors, they all now have the option to enable advertisement. These are all pretty self-explanatory. The top one, the Show More Games, basically is going to act as a show games button. So when you put this within an actor, within a condition like a touch is pressed, it'll essentially show the more games that Playhaven has, their library. And then from there you can back out and just navigate back to the game. It kind of functions as the initial more games button does for the, I guess, the free users, how they have theirs currently set up, or if you have it enabled at the beginning, it kind of functions the same way, where you see the library, and then you can back out and then continue on with the game. The updated behaviors, this is basically, all the behaviors you've seen before from change scene all the way down to reset scene there. They just now have this enable advertisement little checkbox on the right there. This basically will just say if it's checked, you're opting into a 100% frequency of showing the advertisement when that button is pressed. Now I'm aware that there's some unhappiness behind the 100% rate that this is shown, so I'm here to offer you a little bit of help with percentages.
This is for pro users.
Yeah, this is going to be a pro user only workaround for having percentages set for your advertisement. So if you're familiar with the random function in GameSalad, this is very helpful for a lot of different things, but in this particular instance, we are going to use it for changing the percentages of actually showing an advertisement. So as you can see in my image here, a couple of screenshots that I made of just a part of a project that I was working in. Basically, you want to create a new attribute. This would be an integer attribute or some other numeric. You can even do a true-false if you wanted to, but that would only be 50-50. And you'll want to basically say, in this attribute, you'll reference it saying, when touch is pressed, I want to change this attribute to a random number 1 through whatever you want that percentage to be. For this particular instance, I'll have it be a 10% chance. So when touch is pressed, change my add ID integer that I've created, this attribute, to a random number 1 through 10, and then a rule that follows that, just a secondary rule, that basically says if that particular add ID, that integer attribute has been created, is equal to 1, then change scene and show the advertisement. Otherwise, change the scene but don't show the advertisement. So that gives you a 10% chance that it'll basically show the advertisement only 10% of the time. So hopefully that's kind of a good workaround for some people who want to have a set percentage for their adverts. So again, just to kind of recap, integer attribute allowing you to use a numeric, change that add ID or that integer to something random 1 through a certain number to decide what percentage you want to have. And then you'll have, another rule that basically says what if that ad ID is equal to, that particular number. You can change the scene with an advertisement or without the advertisement. So that really just gives you your opportunity to just give it whatever percentage you really want to give it.
Jonathan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
The way the rules are down, the bottom rules for the self ad ID should probably be inside the touch pressed, if you're thinking, but just for displaying so we can see this separately and explain better, we're just showing them in different parts.
So essentially, you'd want to have that secondary rule within the touches pressed, so it fires off at the same time. Okay, hopefully that maybe answers a couple of questions and maybe gives you guys some understanding on how to create a percentage for your advert showing. Moving forward, so this is basically how the basic user will see the publishing flow or see their behaviors or what have you while working with the new version of GameSalad. Unlike the pro version where you all have the enable advertisement checkbox here on the right, it'll be clean, it'll be just as it was before. And the publishing flow, which you guys will see a little bit later, maybe another slide or two from here, will be just as it was before, moving forward, giving you an orientation for your Playhaven at startup, but otherwise there will be no other features or behaviors or any other way for them to alter the actual Playhaven feature itself. Now this may not look too different to you until I move forward here. This is kind of what you're going to see now. So before I get to the before I get to the publishing flow, I do want to go ahead and touch on this one real quick, replace behavior. This is the show banner behavior. This is replacing the show iAds behavior. And this is basically just to keep it less of a show iAds, like to keep it more generalized, just in case, as ad services are added in the future, we'll be able to kind of tweak from there moving forward. And that'll allow you to also select your banner position for orientation purposes, wherever you want it to be. But yeah, so the show banner essentially replaces show iAds, and it's just keeping it generalized so that when we do add more ad services, essentially it'll be showing that particular banner for the ad service selected. Okay, so back to the publishing flow. So this is now what you will see in the publishing flow. We've gotten rid of a few tabs here, as you may or may not have noticed. No more videos, but we do now have the ad partners. And in the ad partners, this is basically we'll decide whether or not certain ad partners will be displayed throughout your game. The startup ad here, if selected, Playhaven will essentially show up as the Show More Games button at the bottom of your screen. This is what currently free users see. The basic users see this as at the bottom of their screen. Banner ads is basically what I showed you, the show banners, where it'll show iAds throughout your game whenever you wanted to show it. Interstitial ads, these are the ads that pop up between your scenes. This is what we worked on with the percentages. And then the Show More Games, this is whenever you have a Show More Games button throughout your entire project. Now this is basically saying if I have Show More Games on scenes 1, 2, and 3, and I don't want them to be on, I can essentially just hide the button or what have you, and it won't actually be active. This could also work if you had like separate things functioning within one button. So if you had like a check out some other cool things and you want it to show off more games as they hit it, and then they back out and they're still on another screen or something along those lines. That might be a little bit confusing, but technically what basically this does is it just says if you disable it, Show More Games, the button itself does not function throughout the game. So hopefully that's a pretty decent explanation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. So we got onto writable tables. Hooray. This is something that we are really excited about here at the office. Code Monkey and myself, we've been working with writable tables, and it's fantastic to have. We've been able to convert a lot of our attributes to tables to just store a lot of values there. We've also been opened up to doors like, creating RPGs and having shops and stuff like that. So this is a really big feature for us, and we're really, really excited to have it. I know it's been long waited for, and I hope it's well received by you all as it has been by us. But yeah, so just to give some of y'all, because I've seen a couple of questions pop up, what are writable tables used for? And basically, you could use it for, anything from RPG gear stats. You could say, these particular pieces of gear have these kind of stats. They have more defense or more hit power, or they have more mana, or they have more magic power, or what have you. That's something that you can really utilize with writable tables. And as you pick up new pieces of armor, new things are written to, your particular gear. Essentially, you can also move forward to massive attribute management. I can't stress this enough. We've gone from having tons and tons and tons of attributes in one single game to having minimal attributes referencing table values, which is really exciting for us because of the fact that, well, everybody that's had more than 20, 30, 40 attributes in a game probably is a little bit of a headache, especially when you can't necessarily sort it alphabetically. It's nice to have it all in one place. You can also go about doing, huge save games. You can save all these attributes to one particular table and then reference them in a load game later on. If you get really, really, really ambitious and you want to jump into creating full level layouts, you could do that as well. Dictating what tiles go where with what type of textures. And, it even moves on to things like inventory and shops. You can have all of your shop items located within the tables itself. And even more, you can do local high score leaderboards. Now, this is, not necessarily important to have for some pro users if you didn't want to have local leaderboards because you have Game Center. Cool, but hey, if you wanted some self-reference, you could totally do that within your game, and it basically just shows off, hey, I've got these cool high scores within my game. Some people like to see that stuff. So yeah, I think that's pretty much Code Monkey. You have any, Jonathan? You have any other usability over there? Nope. Okay, so that pretty much kind of sums up some of the ideas on, or some of the use cases for writable tables. I'm sure the sky's the limit. I've heard other things like, setting times, like intervals, and I think this might have been something T-shirt Booth had said, where you kind of set intervals over a period of time. You can rewind time in the future, kind of like a Prince of Persia type thing, or something along those lines. And so many other really, really cool features. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward now to the new behaviors that you can find in GameSalad using the writable tables behaviors. So the first one here is the add remove row. This is basically allowing you to add or remove a row within a table. Pretty self-explanatory. And you have the change table value. This will allow you to select a table, select what particular row, select the column, and then what value you want it to change it to. Then after that, you have copy table. Thank you. You have copy table, which will allow you to copy from one table to another, giving you the opportunity to, save the initial table values to an unused table and then reference them later down the line, which I can touch on in a little bit. And then you have save table, which will allow you to save all the values to your newly edited table. So these have a lot of different use cases, and I'll try and touch on every one of them as I move forward. So the first one, the add remove row, the basic breakdown is this. You have your table selection here. This selects any existing table within your project, and that enables these action options to be turned on. Then you have add row, and if you click the drop down here, you'll get remove row. And then at beginning, you can choose at beginning, at end, or at index, specifying if you want it to be at the beginning of the entire table, at the end of the table, or somewhere at a specified index. This could be dictated via a dynamic number attribute, be dictated by just a specific number if you wanted to do it. Or you could even do something like at a table row count. You could have it specified there at the very bottom of your row, or at the bottom of your table. Okay, so This is pretty much everything I kind of touched on. This is basically saying, kind of where you can add the rows. You can add them at the beginning again, at the end, at index, or at the dynamic value. So this is kind of what I was saying. This kind of allows you to see how everything looks when it's lit up and being utilized. And an example of how things kind of function, how it'll look in your table. This is your initial table here on the left, right? You have black, brown, red, and blue. If you choose to add a row at the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and move to the right here. It's going to add a row to the very top, and it's going to move all of your other rows down by one. If you choose to add a row at the end, it will add one row at the very bottom. So I have 4 rows at the beginning. Now I have 5 rows here, and it's an empty row. If I decide to add a row at index 2, so this is a specified number, I say I want it to go at that particular row. It's going to add it right here, and it's going to shift everything down. That's below it. And if I decide I want to add a row at index table row count, so this is what I was saying before, it'll essentially count how many rows you have currently, and it'll add it right there, shifting the row that it's replacing down by 1. Now, much like the add row, you have remove row. This pretty much functions, the same way, but the inverse, where you can remove the row at the beginning, remove the row at the end, remove the row at index, or remove the row at a specified dynamic value. So from here, again, if I wanted to remove a row from the beginning, I went from having black, brown, red, and blue to now just having brown, red, and blue, removing that top one, the black cell. If I added a row at the end, I would remove row at the end. I would essentially be removing the blue row at the bottom here. If I wanted to remove row at index 2, go ahead and remove that just to make it less confusing. So if I were to remove row at index 2, it's going to remove the brown row that I had here and shifting everything up. And if I remove at table row count, for this particular table, it's going to remove the blue row, the very bottom one. So hopefully that is understanding, like it's easy to understand across the board here. This is a pretty nice visual made by CodeMonkey. To move on to the writable tables, the change table value. This is a little bit more, not necessarily complex, but this is just a little bit bigger of a feature than the others. So in here you see you have table, which is basically selecting the existing table, as you saw with the add remove row. Then you have a specified row that you want to modify. This basically can be a specific row number or one dynamically created with an attribute, much like the index values that we were talking about here, like this. We also can, you also have the column area. Now this is basically allowing you to select what column you want to modify, much like the row here, except you can edit multiple columns by clicking the plus sign, as you can see demonstrated on the side here. Within one row in this particular behavior, I'm editing one row, but several columns worth of behaviors, and I believe you can go on for however long you want. And after about 7 of them, they create this little scroll bar here, so you can kind of scroll up and down. And then you have the value, and this basically tells the cell what is going to be modified, what's going to be added or changed. So it is pretty self-explanatory, but there just seems to be a little bit more going on the screen here. Then we have, excuse me, the copy table. Now this allows you to essentially copy a table. Say you have 2 tables in your game, and the first table has all of this information. It has, color values, or it has, gear scores, or it has something of the like. Well, if I wanted to copy all of that information to another table and then alter the information on that initial table, what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to copy table 1 to table 2 here, and I'm going to edit, later down the line, table 1, Table 2 never gets edited, so it's always going to keep that initial set of values. So if I ever want to reference that table again, I can always just reference that table 2. And it's pretty straightforward. You pretty much just select which table you're going to copy from, and you're going to select which table you're going to copy it to. So it's just a basic copy-paste function. So here's an example. For table 1, if I have these particular color values and these particular numbers, and table 2 has just some random values that I put here and I just left them there. I didn't feel like removing them, or they are they need something else. They're required for another part of my game or something of the like. If I decided to copy the table over to this table, it would essentially remove all of the data and replace it with what was in the first table. So again, it's just a basic copy-paste function. And it copies the whole table. Just want to make sure this is known. Copies the entire table over. So you're not going to have rows from the previous table or from the table you're pasting to. The rows aren't going to stay, or values aren't going to stay. It's pretty much just going to go ahead and copy and paste right over that entire thing. And last but not least, for the writable tables, we have save table. Now this is a really, really helpful feature. It's really simple to use too. You can select what table you want and you just save the value. And basically what it's doing is it takes all of the data that has been altered, or that if you just want to leave it how it is, if you want to return things back to 0 and then save that value, it essentially will save that value. Because when you use the reset game behavior or shut down and restart the app, tables are reset to the last saved table values. So if you don't necessarily save that table value as you edit it, it will return back to its previous value. So that's something you definitely want to use. It's very, very helpful to have. It's very useful, and it's very easy. So I think that sums it up for our writable tables. I can go through and basically show you guys, before I move on to the iPad Retina display stuff, just a couple of things in action here, just so you can see the first thing I was talking about for Playhaven, just to kind of go back to that beginning real quick. This is what the rule looks like within GameSalad. This is the rule that I created for changing the random ad ID to a number 1 to 10 to give me a 10% chance to show that advertisement. And here's my self integer just for that reference number. It's pretty easy to grasp once you kind of do it yourself. You'll see how often things will pop up. If you do 50% chance, you'll notice that 50% of the time it pops up. It's a good little test case if you wanted to try it. So that's the Playhaven bit. And then Jonathan was so kind to create a leaderboard template here, demonstrating what we were talking about with, basically logging score, saving a table value, resetting the table value, or resetting the game and going back to the initial table value. And basically it functions much like this. So I've got a score counter here counting up, and I say, all right, I want to log my high score now. I have a score of 524. And then Jonathan decides to jump in, and he blows my score out of the water. And now I want to save these scores because, hey, I want to keep this for the future. So if I click Save Score and I reset my game, it'll save the changed values. So what'll happen there is basically, until I change those table values at a later date. Lauren Salad just scored way higher than all of us. So until I change those table values or reset the table to 0, these numbers will stay here. So what this button here does, the reset scores, is it basically copies the table 2, which is a blank table, over to table 1, and then saves the values. So now I have 0. So if I reset game, it should still be 0 because I have now copied a table from a blank table over my high scores and then saved it. And I can show you guys the behavior behind that. So in here, we were doing the log score. Basically what's happening here is, it's counting up based off of, some of the logic here. When touch is pressed, save the score the attribute score to game.score. And then it'll change this particular attribute, the self-iterator, to game.leaderboard, and it'll log the score for you. As it counts up, this is basically logic that says, hey, this score is higher than that score, so I'm going to put it higher on the leaderboard, essentially, or higher in the table. Excuse me. I need some water. Sorry about that.
So much talking.
So much excitement about writable tables. I can't shut up about them. So what's happening here is it's basically saving the score to the table, and then based on what the score is, it'll kind of dictate whether or not it's above or below the previous score, depending on the actual score value. Then the save scores. This is basically saying when touch is pressed, save table leaderboard. So this is initially saying this blank table here, this is supposed to be blank, is going to be changed to have my initials, CK, and then that awesome score of 524 that I had. Essentially saving that leaderboard. Then we had the reset game button. The reset game is just that. It just basically says when touch is pressed, reset the game. It's pretty straightforward, a little behavior there. And last but not least, we have the reset scores button. And what this does is this basically says, okay, I'm going to copy table, default empty table over my leaderboard table, and then I'm going to save that leaderboard table right after, essentially creating a table that has, 0 value across the board. There's nothing left on that leaderboard table. And that's pretty much the most I can pull from this particular template. It's pretty much, it covers every new feature that Writable Tables has to offer. And I believe that we will be putting this template out into the wild. We're going to do some more iteration testing on it, make sure that it's all functional, and get it out there to y'all here in the near future. So moving forward, the iPad Retina display, pretty straightforward new feature. It's just like the resolution independence checkbox for iPhone that you'd seen prior to 0993. It'll pop up right here in a new project. Just like the iPhone landscape and portrait, you gotta have iPad landscape and portrait with resolution independence enabled. And this ultimately opens up the door for larger textures. So now you can have a texture that's the size of 2048 by 2048, basically, doubling in size from the initial 1024 by 1024. This functions just as the iPhone resolution independence function. One note that I think I want to make sure that I can kind of put out there for you guys, just because I've heard about this firsthand. When you are working with PNGs and you're working in Photoshop or something of the like, make sure your DPI is the standard set 72 DPI. I know that a lot of people like to work in a higher DPI, but that's the main goal behind working in a higher DPI, is mostly for print work. If you're going to print your stuff out on a banner or what have you. And usually when I do any artwork, I will work in a higher DPI for my marketing pieces of art, but work in the standard 72 DPI for any artwork I'm going to be implementing into my game. That's just something I thought I would share. It functions properly with the resolution independence. I've never really worked outside of 72 DPI within GameSalad, but I heard that it could cause occasional wonky images. Wonky. I like that word. And last but not least, just a couple new things. people are always asking me what restitution means, and I just said it's bounciness. And I think our developers agree that everybody should know that restitution is now bounciness, essentially. So now that everybody can look at the physics inside of their actors and say, hey, I can adjust the bounciness of my actor and not whatever restitution means. Also, I'm going to be honest, one of my favorite things added to this release is the ability to now remove images after I've added them. That right there probably made me cry a little bit inside. I was so happy because of the fact that I don't have to put a nil image in anymore to replace an image I didn't want to use with a white box or what have you. So now you can just go ahead and click the little Xbox here, not like the Microsoft Xbox, but the little X circle thing here, and it basically removes the image you've previously selected for that particular actor. And one last thing that I'm sure might have gone a little bit unnoticed is now GameSalad loads your game as soon as it's loading the splash screen. So as soon as a user kicks open that game, as they're being displayed this cool, awesome splash screen for this super cool game you just made, the game is loading in the background, trying to get to them as fast as possible, helping the initial loading time, tenfold. Well, so to speak, it's helping it load quicker so they can get to that game quicker. And I think that pretty much covers it. Covers all the features, the new behaviors, Playhaven, pretty much everything that I am aware of. I don't know of anything else that's been added. Anything without my knowledge.
Hopefully there's no surprises, and this covers it all.
I try to cover all the bases.
Good. That's a good school of thought for the webinar.
Make sure they know everything as much as we know.
That's right.
Hoorah.
All right, let's do some questions then. We'll go ahead and you guys can still feel free to keep sending in questions as we're going through this question answer little session here, and we're going to start with Playhaven questions. So let's, first question is, this user says, I'm a pro user, and you want to use the show more games button with my players. If they click it, will I get revenue? So can you explain how the revenue works with show more?
Right. So it works the same as the interstitial. If they click the button, they'll be taken to a list of games, and they can go to those games on the App Store and download them. Pretty much, from our investigations, every game that is referred has been free so far. We haven't seen any paid games, so the incentive for them to click and try them out is pretty good. The payment occurs. It's a little complex. Bear with me. So they click it. It links it to you, they download the game, and then they run the game. And they have, I believe, a week to run the game for the first time for it to be attributed to you, and at that point you get paid.
Just running the game, you mean just
running the game
loading it up?
Just booting it up.
Okay.
Right. Just clicking on it doesn't do it. They actually have to download the game and run it once within a week.
Okay. Great. Okay, next question is, I think we might have covered this a little bit about all the options that are available to pro members. So the question is, can I show pro Playhaven ads without changing scenes? So can you utilize Playhaven ads if your game only has one scene?
The interstitial ads only show up with the scene transitions.
So maybe is the answer for them to use the more games button?
Right.
Yeah.
I would use the more games button in that case.
More games behavior, excuse me.
You could also pause.
Or you can use pause game.
Okay, yeah, so the answer is if you only have one scene, use pause game. That will give you an interstitial ad opportunity, or use show more games behavior. Cool. Okay, question. If I wanted to have iAds in my game, would I have to select iAd under the banner ads section when publishing?
Yes.
So through the publishing flow here, as you initially put in your show banner, so this is the behavior here, when you put this in your project, much like the original show iAds behavior, you have to actually have this behavior in your project for it to work. You'll add this behavior, and then through the publishing flow, you'll make sure to select that you want this particular banner ad, the iAd, to display. And this will enable the iAds to work so they'll function properly in your project, in your game. I think that
However, you do still have to set them up in Apple's.
Oh, of course, and of course, like before with iAds, you would have to set up your iAd, your setup via your iTunes Connect, or however you go about setting up iAds via iTunes. So you make sure you set up all of that stuff, and then you can get iAds to essentially function properly in your game. So step 1, show banner. Step 2, make sure that this is turned on, and before you put your game out there, you make sure you've confirmed with Apple that you've got iAds enabled for your game.
Okay. Regarding Playhaven for pro users, is there any way to allow users to purchase an in-app purchase that disables any and all types of Playhaven ads that would be integrated into a free app? So interstitial, more games, banners, etc.
So,
Get here, come around.
oh, I'm sorry.
We're pulling in
Bring in one of the engineers.
We're gonna get you the
The
best
guy.
answers you can possibly have.
from the horse's mouth.
So here's how I recommend doing that. Since these are all in behaviors, you can make a. Oh, where's the microphone?
It's right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can make a behavior or have the behaviors under a condition of an attribute so that the in-app purchase then triggers attribute to be true or false and turns on and off behaviors however you want.
So essentially, you can have a button in your game or an in-app purchase that says, buy the full game or buy the ad-free version of my game for 99 cents, and they click it and it says okay, and then you've disabled all of these things by using maybe a Boolean attribute or something of the like, treating it as if it's a just as a regular in-app purchase.
Yeah, the only one of these ads you can't do that with is the startup more games button. There's no way to turn that off after the game's been published.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Okay, next question about Playhaven. Says, hello, I'm a pro user. I've never used Playhaven in the past, but I wanted to know more about the more games option. The question is, can I just show my other games that are on Playhaven games, or even tell Playhaven which category of games I would want to show? Like, for example, if that GameSalad user is publishing an adventure game, do they have the option for the More Games button to show other adventure games?
I'm afraid not. Playhaven has they sell those ad spaces to a variety of games, and those people pay, what I can tell, pretty good money in order to be referred through the Playhaven network. So those come through their list. In the past, we have had some people comment about some ads that they felt were inappropriate. We've dealt with that with Playhaven, and whenever those are brought to our attention, we go to them and we talk to them and see if they truly are something that we feel wouldn't be appropriate. They're removed from their queue to our network. But you can't plug your own games in at this time, and you can't select which categories, I'm afraid.
Okay. Looks like that might be all the questions right now on Playhaven. And before we move over to writable tables, I just wanted to, I know this webinar is just for pro users, but all of our GameSalad community will be watching this later on. Hopefully, if we're able to get it up today. I just wanted to quickly address, kind of with Playhaven, about the ads and kind of the experience or the reason why we changed it from the startup splash screen ad to the interstitial ads. And while there's certainly more places right now where ads could potentially appear, we feel like the reduced fill rate is actually going to work, so your players are going to encounter ads on a more intermittent basis. Also, moving the ad away from the front of the game was our way to improve player experience. That way, the players of the games are not going to be bombarded with a full screen advert immediately after purchasing the game. So it's going to be a much more elegant, discreet, and a gameplay experience that's on par with, most games that show advertisements. And, just a general sentiment that we understand that ads can be overwhelming when testing in the viewer, where right now it's showing every possible ad position, triggering that interstitial stub. But again, this is only meant to show you the various positions where ads could potentially pop up, and it's not going to be indicative of the way that your users will experience. So anyway, just wanted to share my little get off my soapbox moment. But let's go back to writable tables and talk about some of those questions. Okay, so one of the questions is the GameSalad developer says, sorry, don't know if this is a kind of moot question, but change table allows the changing of multiple columns within a single row. Is there any difference, advantage, or any reason that we can't do it the other way? Edit multiple rows within a single column. This user says, I haven't thought it through myself yet, but it would suggest that you'd have to plan out your tables with this in mind. Could there be a situation where you would end up having to reverse your table just because of this?
Well, I can definitely say on the first part of that, which would be nice to maybe have the Writable Tables developer in here just to ask, maybe why. But
Oops.
But
he walked out of the room.
But essentially, we actually were questioning. We're wondering about the same thing about we would like to be able to switch that row. Basically enabling the first selection to be columns and being able to change multiple rows in one column. That's something that we're going to be discussing in office, and hopefully it's heard, and we can all be happy and cheer about it sometime in the near future. On the part about planning, I guess, in advance or for the future, Code Monkey, Mr. Jonathan, would you have any maybe input on that particular question?
Not right now.
So essentially, I think you probably would have to plan maybe a little bit in advance to kind of verify that if you're going to be changing multiple columns in one specific row, you would probably want to specify that what this row is going to mean. So for me, when I create a row or when I create a table, I'll say, okay, this table is going to, the first row is going to have this integer value, and it's going to be something like level 1 health, right, or level 1 stats. And I want, I'll make it a little bit smaller so I don't have to do a whole lot here. I do health, and I can do gear, score, and I can do weapon, strength, and I can do defense, right? So I already know that I'm going to create this table to work this way, and I believe that this is what the developers had in mind, that a lot of the times you'll see one particular row will function across multiple columns in this particular instance. And you can kind of add as you go. If I decide sometime down the line that I want to add something cool like how awesome my character can surf, and his surf skill is going to be, over 9,000. So I can kind of add as I go. So yeah, you're gonna have a little bit of foresight on this, but in all honesty, I feel like it'll kind of function as you work with it. You'll kind of see how it works as you develop, how it just kind of makes sense. It's just something that you kind of understand as you're doing it. Trust me, I've never really worked with tables prior to writable tables prior to this release, and it just kind of started to click as I worked with it. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. I apologize for it being a little bit of a beating around the bush type answer.
I'm going to jump back to 2 more Playhaven questions for Mark Chibrika before he has to step out of our webinar. The first, so got a last-minute Playhaven question. Get it in now. First question is, how many games are displayed in the More Games list from Playhaven?
I'll be honest, I do not know off the top of my head. When I've looked at it in the past, it looks like it's about 5 or 6. But if you give me a minute, I will see if I can pull that up while we answer the question.
And we can put that up on the forums later too.
Absolutely. I apologize. I don't remember that offhand.
This is a question that I know has come up also in the forums a little bit. Maybe if you could speak to it some. The question is, what efforts are being made regarding to knowing how much money we're making on games with Playhaven, as far as reporting or seeing
question.
that money? This user says, I have a game that was released just shy of 2 months ago.
Right, it is an excellent question. Yeah, let me get into some detail on this. When we launched all the service, before we launched all the service, we went ahead and set up an entirely new back-end system here to be able to handle money coming in and being assigned to everybody correctly and paid out correctly. The good news is that system works perfectly. All the money that comes in is being assigned properly. We're still collecting, obviously from Playhaven and Keep, and we're making all the financial calculations to make sure everybody gets paid correctly. The problem that we ran into is that system doesn't do a very good job of individually reporting. It turns it into a completely manual process, and it's something that has to be completely coded up from the ground up. So we haven't been able to run the reporting the way we'd liked. What we are doing is putting in a new reporting structure that we plan to launch very soon that will, looks like what we'll be doing is tying it into your profile page so you'll be able to download sales reports. I don't have a target date on that, something that's being actively worked on. The first payments are going to be coming out probably next week for Keep and Playhaven. And what we're going to do until we get reporting done is we're going to go ahead and waive, at least for the time being, the $100 minimum to get paid. So everybody's going to get paid everything that they're owed. With that, you should be getting a report of exactly what's happened, what exactly you made, because the engine just it completely collapsed when we tried to run it, and we're working with a third party to work on that. But in the short term, as I said, we're working on a system that will let you download your reports. It's something that I feel bad that we haven't been able to get running the way we had planned on, but the good news is the money is being accurately tracked. You are going to get exactly what you paid. There's a reporting piece we have to fix. So I hope that getting everybody's money right away instead of having to wait in case you didn't do at least $100 helps, but all of it is being actively put together. And believe me, as soon as I have more information, we will be making posts on it.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's all the Playhaven questions.
And I actually have a meeting with the people who are on our backend system now. So
there you go.
That is one of our hot topics of discussion.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. And if you guys have other questions about Playhaven, let's direct them at this point into our webinar thread on the forums, and that way we can tackle any of those later on today. Okay. Let's talk again about writable tables. Switch back over to that. Okay, this question is about table save. Is this effectively the same thing as saving attributes so that values are available when the app is reopened or closed?
Yes.
Plain and simple, yes. It works the exact same way. The benefit of having this, however, is instead of having, I don't know, I keep going back to this. I can't stress enough how much I dislike having so many attributes. But instead of, saving all 4 of these attributes, having to save them individually, I can just essentially just save the table value and then reference them later.
Okay.
So yes.
The answer is yes. Okay. Okay. This is a question about reset scores. Reset scores button had one rule to copy blank table over, then save table. If I was doing this, I would have been tempted to save with a timer, and after 0.1 seconds or something. Is this just this developer being too safe? Is it guaranteed that rules on top happen before rules beneath?
So it's a question more about order of operation. Naturally, we try to work in that natural flow of order of operation, simply just because if timing is off, something might save before it was changed or what have you. And I can understand the concern behind wanting to use a timer. Honestly, you can do that if you wanted to be on the safer side of things. It's not necessary exactly because of the fact that it does function in that particular fashion. Where did we have it here? We had it in save scores. So, or reset scores, I'm sorry. So essentially we copy the table and then save the table. I mean, if I were to change these around, because of the fact that it's so close together and it's not like it's doing a whole heap of work, it would probably function as expected, where it would copy the table over after it's saved the table. I would just go ahead and say stick with order of operations. It's good to follow that as a rule of thumb for development. And if you do feel like it's not updating properly, to wrap it in a timer, as you said, for maybe 1 second or 0.01 seconds, depending on how quick quickly thereafter you want it to save. I've done it both both methods, and both of them seem to work just fine. So hopefully that does answer your question.
Okay.
Lauren?
Next question. This developer asks, I've wanted to do a game with a snake where a series of objects follow the head of a snake. And he says, from what I've seen so far, this is not an easy thing to do in GameSalad. I know that programmers use arrays. Is this writable table effectively an array?
That's an interesting question. Pretty much yes. You can add, since you can add and remove cells or rows as needed. You can do that. However, you may want to stray away from doing that. It kind of depends on how you look at the logic to change all the values of what the little pieces see. I actually made a snake game, but it didn't even require tables. That it was spawning a headpiece, whoever is in the front. But then you could use tables to figure out what the last piece, what kind of attributes it has for like color or whatever, to modify it as the next head piece of the snake appears, gets spawned, or gets destroyed.
So essentially, you're not using tables for the creation of your snake game. However, you are using the writable tables to dictate, some of the particular attributes for each piece of the snake as you collect apples or what have you. Something like that. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
No, I mean like for the snake, every time you eat an apple or something, it grows in length.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have your table that has the headpiece always has these attributes, the second piece also always has these attributes, and then so on, and you keep adding rows as as the snake gets longer. But you don't want to have to constrain a snake part to a specific row and then keep changing all the table values, shifting it all the time.
That'll bog down the engine essentially, because it's always updating forever.
Okay.
So maybe that might answer that question.
Hopefully. Next question. Are there limits on how many rows and columns can be added on tables during gameplay?
That would actually be that's a good question for the developers. For me, I believe the max row column count was 999, I think. Mr. Allen, are there limits on how many rows and columns can be added via writable tables?
Let me go.
I'm sorry, I'm calling on the Playhaven developers for writable tables, but I know that the max limit for tables itself is 999. But we will get back to that question. I promise you, we'll get you an answer.
Be right back.
Okay. Next question is, can we reference row column by name versus integer index?
Yes, you can. Actually, as a matter of fact, I caught a glimpse of that question a few minutes ago, and I saw that, and I did that here. I basically referenced the two values.
That's different.
Is that not what he's talking about?
If they mean with the new behaviors, I don't think we can.
If this is what you're talking about, you can kind of see what I've got going on here. Please feel free to type in another question, maybe for some clarification. But what I did here was I basically just used the reference names. Where's the row column name versus integer index? If this is what you're talking about, cool. If not, yeah, definitely kick us another question, and I will be happy to answer.
Alan is back for the answer to what are the limits on rows and columns added on tables during gameplay.
So you can't add new columns, only add rows.
Oh, yeah, duh.
And there is no limit for adding rows.
So you can add as many rows as you want, as long as it's within that max, count of.
Basically, it would be capped by the memory usage, the memory size of the device.
So that was silly.
All right.
There is no add column behavior.
Yes, there is no add column.
Okay, this question just asked, basically, are there any basic materials about tables? I know today we went over a lot of implementation for writable tables, but a lot of our user base might be new to tables. What I would suggest is to start in GameSalad Cookbook. Every release we have, we put up really detailed walkthroughs of each feature. So under GameSalad Cookbook, go to tutorials and you'll find tutorials now for tables and writable tables. So it can kind of take you back to the basics. We also released a webinar and a webinar video for the tables release. So that might be a good place to start if writable tables is looking like, whoa, this is cool, but I need to go back to square one. That's where I would suggest to go. And of course, as always, our community members are really helpful and friendly and available to answer questions and be a learning resource as well in the forums. I know we're going a little over on time, so I'm going to we can kind of try to do quick answers on some of the stuff, power through this.
Yes.
Okay, question. Although I've made a couple of games, I'm often looking at other types of apps that I can make using GameSalad. This is in relation to saving tables when the app is closed. Is the saving reliable enough that it can be used for database type apps? Hope this makes sense.
If I understand that correctly, I mean, basically, if you wanted to save a whole heap of numbers, if you wanted to save a bunch of attributes like values, like if it's a deck of cards and you want it to be like the King of Hearts or the Ace of Spades or something like that. In that particular type of database, I think if that was what you're talking about. If I'm not answering your question, by the way, please feel free to kick us another question. We'll try to answer it as quick as possible. But yeah, essentially, if you use the save tables, it should work as expected and save all of your data information, and then be able to reference that at a later date or later time. Just as if it were a large database full of information.
Next question. With writable tables, is it possible to fill in space, like a game on a grid? If you walk over the grid and wall off an area, can we have it detect that it's closed off or fill in that area?
Let me read that question again. I'm sorry. With writable tables, is it possible to fill in space like a game on a grid? I'm not.
Yeah, I don't entirely understand the question.
Yeah.
You can, if you hit a square with specific coordinates, you can change the table value with the change table value referencing the X and Y and change it up. Yes, I guess.
So we'll look into that one more. But for now, sounds like yes, but we might need more information. Okay, let's do a couple quick questions on iPad Retina support, and we'll wrap this baby up.
I want to ask you another question. Really quick. You can, when you asked if you can specify the name or the column and row, yes, you can. In the change table value, you can just type in name, no quotes around it, into the text field entry thing, not in the expression editor. So yes.
Okay. All right. iPad Retina support. This is a question. I'm not sure, Chris, how familiar you are with this. The question was, will iPad Retina feature fix pixelated icon issues? They said in the past, when creating an ad hoc or just releasing a game and installing it on their iPad 3, the icon for the app was kind of pixelated, but it looked fine on the iPad 2. Does this have anything, iPad Retina support, have anything to do with this pixelation issue?
I don't know. I don't think so. This sounds like it's an icon-related issue that's more on the publishing side of GameSalad. So the answer to that, I'm actually not sure of. I apologize for not having a solid answer for you there.
Chris, can you talk a little bit more about
DPI.
DPI and what's acceptable?
The industry standard for DPI is 72. I don't go below, I don't go higher than, unless I'm going to be printing, and then I'll go much higher, like 300 or 200 or something like that. Or I think 300 is the industry standard for print. But I would never really recommend going below a DPI of 72.
I'm going to restate that question. The question was, what about using a DPI of 1 with the size at 2048 by 2048? Is that acceptable?
I don't know what the benefit of that would be. That actually just, it doesn't sound like there's any benefits of using a DPI of 1. I would just recommend, if you're going to use Photoshop or create your own textures or images, you'd want to stick to a DPI of 72.
When GameSalad imports images, it makes them all 72 DPI, so sizes of the image can be altered if you don't have it 72 DPI.
Yeah.
As far as like, at least a few years ago, it was like that.
But essentially, best rule of thumb, at least for me, is whenever I work in GameSalad, for music, for sound, for images, I always make sure it's PNG. I always make sure that my DPI is 72. I always make sure my sounds are M4A and OGG, just things that GameSalad recognizes, so there's no down conversion or of any sort.
Okay, last question. When I tried working with iPad 3 resolution by changing scene size, it's so huge that even if my iMac resolution is to maximum, so is it possible to view scene better, especially when I have a wider screen? Does that make sense? When I tried working...
I'm not sure I grasp or understand that question. I'm sorry.
You don't need to change the scene size for iPad 3. You just still keep it at 1024 by 768 as you would design it for a normal iPad. Just like the original switch from iPhone 3 to iPhone 4 for the Retina display, you still design it at the same size for all devices. It's just the images are twice the size, and it uses that same image size at half the size.
Mm-hmm. So it shrinks it down, essentially. Thank you for understanding that question, Jonathan.
Beautiful. Okay, I know we there was a couple questions that might have got lost in the mix, and I apologize if we lost sound on you guys. Sometimes GoToWebinar is not always the most reliable with sound issues, so we apologize. But we're going to have to wrap things up. I know we're 15 minutes over. If you have additional questions, we, as always, will be keeping our eyes on the forums, and we'll hopefully have this video ready and available to you later today or early tomorrow. So thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to seeing all the great things that you guys are going to create with Writeable tables.